Hi, this is Mac from Mac's List. Before we start the show, I want to let you know about my new book, Land Your Dream Job Anywhere. I've been helping job seekers find meaningful, well-paying work since 2001, and now I put all my best advice into one easy-to-use guide. My book shows you how to make your resume stand out in a stack of applications, where you can find the hidden jobs that never get posted, and what you need to do to ace your next job interview. Get the first chapter now for free. Visit maxlist.org/anywhere. This is Find Your Dream Job, the podcast that helps you get hired, have the career you want, and make a difference in life. I'm Mac Pritchard, your host and publisher of Mac's List. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Ben Forstag, Becky Thomas, and Jessica Black from the Mac's List team. This week, we're talking about unconventional job search hacks that really work. Most job seekers use the same strategies. A typical search might look like this. Start your day with a visit to the job boards. Spend your afternoon filling out applications. And then wait weeks hoping an employer responds. Here's the problem with this approach. You're competing against dozens, perhaps hundreds of applicants who do exactly the same thing. Our guest expert this week is Nissar Ahamed, who publishes Career Metis. He says if you want to stand out, you need to use unconventional strategies in your search. Nissar and I talk later in the show. Hiring managers see a lot of perfect resumes. Ben has found a blog post that offers unconventional strategies for getting the attention of resume reviewers. He tells us more in a moment. Automation has made many jobs disappear completely. Are there any professions that technology won't make obsolete? That's our question of the week. It comes from listener Carlos Alvarez in Portland, Oregon. Becky shares her advice shortly. As always, let's first check in with the Mac's List team. Our topic this week is unconventional job search hacks. So what is the most unconventional thing you've done to get a job? Who would like to jump in first?
So when I was living in Spain, I decided I wanted to come back to the States and go back to grad school. And so I was looking for a job from the other side of the ocean, to support myself while I was in grad school. And this was I'm guessing it was before job boards were a huge thing. And so what I did was I went on to Craigslist, not Mac's List, Craigslist, and I posted my resume and everything, but posted it on the headline of "I will clean toilets," and the idea was
this wasn't your LinkedIn profile headline.
No. This was I just wanted a headline that would get someone's attention and make them think oh, this is someone who's willing to do anything, because I didn't have a whole lot of career goals outside of I need a job to pay rent while I'm in grad school. And so I put it out there, and in the body of the message I said I prefer not to clean toilets. I prefer to do all these other things that I'm good at, but I'm open to different opportunities. And I probably got 3 or 4 dozen people write me saying if you're really interested in trying something new, come work at my restaurant. And none of those leads turned into any employment. But it did open a lot of doors and start some conversations with people. And in fact, some of those conversations, I still know the person, and I ended up meeting them in person after I moved to the States, and we're kind of acquaintances. I never worked for them, but that was my gimmick.
It was a gimmick. Build a network.
Yeah, it was a gimmick that kind of worked.
Okay. No, that's great.
How about you, Becky, Jessica? Anybody want to jump in?
Let's see. Unconventional job search hacks.
I'll say I did something sort of similar to Ben, not quite as bold, but when I was in kind of a stall of my job search where I was wanting to change industries, I was in the customer service industry, and I was wanting to move into sort of office nonprofit worlds, and I was having a really hard time breaking into it because I was taking a very conventional approach and doing a very sort of standard cover letter and very kind of just polite and like, please, why don't you look over here and hire me because I'm so great and I'm a nice person and all that stuff. And obviously that wasn't working because got to be bold and you got to be a little bit exciting and show that you can stand out from the crowd and not just, the average person. And so I ended up taking a little bit more of that bold approach and started punching up my cover letters a lot more of just being like, look no further for, the person that you're going to hire. That sort of sentiment as an opening line rather than like, to whom it may concern, I'm writing this letter to you in reference to your post. It was, kind of having more of a catchy opening. And even that, I think, is still not super unconventional, but it was enough to sort of break out of the
made a difference.
The stall. Yeah,
good.
It did make a difference. Yeah, good. And it helped change my mindset of going into more of a I am worthy of this position.
Right.
I am. It helped my
you think
mindset
about
a lot.
What you had to offer.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Becky, what about you?
Okay, I got one.
All right.
Yay.
So a few jobs ago, I told my boss that I wanted to leave. Like before I had a job lined up or anything. I just was like, I don't think I want to sort of stay in this position. And I'll preface that with sort of like I had built like a really strong relationship with my boss and she had become sort of a mentor to me already. So I felt comfortable going to her, like feeling like, hey, like I want to talk to you. I feel like I've sort of like learned as much as I can here and contributed as much as I can. And I feel like I need to move on and that opportunity is not here. And she ended up like introducing me to other people and like helping me find my next job.
That's awesome.
Which was crazy. Like it was a very sort of unique situation and I wouldn't recommend that in every situation. But for me, it was like I knew that she was going to be there for me and she cared about my career over like me doing the work under her kind of
right,
thing.
and
it was
you
so
had
great.
Obviously proven that you were dedicated to that organization and that you were not going to leave them high and dry and that she probably appreciated your honesty as well and all those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Great examples. Yeah. This one I think I may have shared on an earlier show. I left a job and I didn't have another one lined up. My colleagues threw me a going away party. And I made my way through my database and I invited people. And in addition to giving people invitations to this party, I also asked them about opportunities they might know about. And somebody told me about a job for which he served as a reference for a candidate. And he encouraged me to call the employer, and I did. And it actually led to a conversation and an interview. And a month later, I had that job, which I found out largely by just inviting people to my going away party. So it was rudimentary networking, but it worked.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Well, I know that we're going to have more unconventional job search hacks in my interview later in the show, but let's turn to you in the meantime, Ben, because you're out there poking around the internet looking for websites, books, tools, and other resources people can use in a job search. What have you found for us this week?
So this week I've got a resource that's completely on point with the topic of today's show, unlike most weeks. So
There's usually a relationship.
Usually, sometimes more tangential than others. But this week the resource is How to Make Yourself Stand Out from All the Other Perfect Resumes. And this comes from Inc.com. And it's a little bit of a think piece. The author, Shane Atchison, he's got this phrase. He basically says, you need to outrun the bear, by which he means everyone has a perfect resume, and to stand out, you really have to find some new gimmick or some hack that helps you differentiate from the crowd. And he doesn't get terribly specific there. I mean, he just says like it needs to be something or just anything that makes you different. He shared two examples from his own experience. One was sending a resume using LinkedIn's InMail feature, which I guess would be a good strategy if you knew that the hiring manager is a real big LinkedIn person. Just because that delivers your application and your resume through like a unique channel as opposed to email, which can get cluttered. He also told the story of one young woman who was trying to get a job at a tech company, and she like hyper geo-targeted Google ad sales.
I remember that case.
To like the company. So like everyone in the company, when they pulled up their computer, like all the Google ads were basically her face and why she was amazing and why they should hire her.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's cool. That sounds like completely overboard, and I could also see that backfiring.
Yeah.
Like, but if you're going for like a online marketing job, that would be perfect, right?
Yeah.
So again, this is kind of a think piece, not a whole lot of like specific tactics. And I'll be honest, I'm a little bit of two minds here because, yes, I think it's important to stand out because every job gets 1,000 applications and you need something to help you stand out from the crowd. But on the other hand, I think, the truth of the matter is that very few people are doing the basics right when it comes to applying for a job. And if you get back to those basics, things like networking and following up and doing things like that, that in and of itself can help you stand out and kind of outrun the bear there. And so, before you start thinking up like, I'm going to come up with a zany infographic resume, or I'm going to start geo-targeting ads to a specific employer, like make sure that the basics are being done well because, again, I'm just pulling a number out here. 90% of folks aren't doing the basics really well, I'd say. So just getting the easy stuff done automatically puts you in the top 10%. And I think that's where you should be dedicating most of your resources, at least early in your job search.
Yeah, and if you do the basics well and then give something a little bit extra in terms of that, like maybe one Google ad rather than 17, it will help make a difference. But I think don't count on that Hail Mary, if you will, to make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, substance has to back up the style.
Right, exactly.
And so, like, no matter what you do, what kind of gimmick or hack you use, if you don't have, like, a solid resume that speaks to the employer's concerns, if you've got a typo in it or if you've got a cover letter directed to the wrong person, like, that's going to just shoot you in the foot. So, focus on the basics. And then if there's a clever way to make yourself stand out, and I'm guessing that this clever way is going to depend a lot on the specific employer you're applying to.
Yes, culture fit.
Go for it.
Good advice. Well, thank you, Ben. And if you've got a suggestion for Ben, please write him. We'd love to share your idea on the show. His address is ben@maxlist.org. Now let's turn to you, our listeners, and Becky is here to answer one of your questions. Becky, what's in the mailbag this week?
So this week we have an email from Carlos Alvarez. He's in Portland, Oregon, and he asks, there's a lot of talk about automation and AI increasingly taking jobs away from white-collar professionals. Any ideas about safe careers that might be immune from these technology advancements? So this is a hot topic. There's a lot of hype around AI and how it affects sort of our professional lives, and it is a real threat to many careers. It could be overhyped in some ways, and it's not like all the robots are taking our jobs in the next 5 years, but it is something to think about for us in sort of the place that we're at in technology advancing really quickly. There's already been a lot of automation that has sort of shrunk certain industries and certain areas of manufacturing, especially things like that. There's tons of articles that address this topic. A lot of them is like, here's the top 10 careers that are going to survive the robot takeover or whatever it is. There's even a website called willrobotstakemyjob.com where you can put in your job title and it'll give you like a percentage of like what the chances are that your job will be taken over by robots. So I put my job title in marketing manager and they were like, you're safe.
Becky, I've been meaning to tell you something.
Did you hire a robot?
I've hired a robot.
No!
You are a robot.
Oh. Twist.
Yeah.
It's a Twilight Zone story twist.
Yeah.
Right.
But like seriously, like because I put my role in as marketing manager and my job responsibilities are a lot of sort of decision making and strategy and creativity. These types of responsibilities are harder to automate than the more routine and mechanical jobs that are already being automated.
Yep.
So when you're thinking about careers that are more immune to automation, it's going to be more of the strategic and creative and complex decision-making roles that are out there. So examples would be like communications, marketing, design, things that are more sort of in tune with humans and what humans need and understanding people and speaking to people. Yeah. And then those mechanical and more routine jobs are easier to automate. And we're going to see those fields shrink over time. So things like bank tellers, financial analysts, like insurance underwriters, like if you're filling out paperwork all day, you might be at risk. So that's sort of the general topic. And I would also say don't necessarily pick a career field that you think is going to be immune to automation just because of that, because that might not fit your skills or your desires for your work.
And there's no guarantee that something else won't come in and take that job away or make it obsolete is the word I was looking for.
Yeah. And like, who knows like how things will advance in 20 years? Like robot might take my job too. So I'm not safe, clearly. Ben's already hired someone, but or something. But yeah, so it is something to think about, and there's lots of resources. I'll add the link to the show notes for Will Robots Take My Job because it is actually pretty interesting.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to use it.
You guys have any other thoughts on that?
I do. So I think one thing that's true in general is that like humans are really bad about predicting the future. And,
True. That's true.
And so I think like automation is coming, and there's certain industries like where you can see like trucking is going to be automated in the next 20 years, and the career of being a trucker, I think, is probably going the way of the dinosaur, which is significant because I believe like trucking is the number one job in all 50 states. Like it employs the most people.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like every time there's been some great invention and people like lamented like, oh, this is destroying like humans being involved in the workplace, it just like opens up new opportunities that we couldn't envision a while ago. And I think a couple months ago, maybe a couple years ago at this point, I talked about one of my resources was like jobs that didn't exist 10 years ago. And like, you know, social media manager, like people didn't know what social media was 10 years ago, and technology opened up and it destroyed a bunch of jobs in traditional media, but then created a whole new category of jobs. And so the only jobs that I think are completely safe are things like plumbers. Like there always needs to be someone who's going to,
even then,
maybe a robot will become a plumber, but I think the key is like to be flexible and to be, don't sell yourself on the idea that like you're going to have this job for the next 50 years and that's it. There's going to be like transition and change in your career, and that's just going to be it. And it may well be change for the good.
Yeah, and keep looking for opportunities to develop yourself even outside of your current industry, but kind of along what you said, Becky, of along your interests, not just because you think that they're safe or whatever, but continuing to grow and adapt, because those are the things that are going to help you in the long run of, you know, using those complex decision making and problem solving abilities that comes from knowing a lot of different things about different industries. I think that'll be really helpful.
Yeah, change is painful, but it is inevitable. And when you've been in the workforce for a few decades, there are jobs that were there when you first started that don't exist anymore. I've certainly seen that in my career. And it's a trend that goes back more than a century. But it doesn't make it any easier. And I like the point that you're all making, that you got to think about not only the jobs that are coming to an end, but the ones that are being created. And how do you, as you say, Jessica, keep learning those new skills and to position yourself for those opportunities.
Yeah, maybe like managing the robot workforce will be a new thing.
Yeah.
Robot HR.
Ooh.
Yeah, I think everybody around here will be doing the table something different in 20 years.
Of course,
It's inevitable.
Who knows?
But,
it's exciting.
But you'll figure it all out. But it's still, change is hard.
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
Well,
thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Becky. And thank you for the question. If you've got a question for Becky, please send her an email. She'd love to hear from you. Her email address is becky@maxlist.org. Or call the listener line. That number is area code 716-JOB-TALK. Or tweet at us. Our Twitter handle is @MaxList. If we use your question on the show, we'll send you a free copy of Land Your Dream Job Anywhere. And we'll be back in a moment. When we return, I'll talk with this week's guest expert, Nissar Ahamed, about unconventional job search hacks that really work. Most people struggle with job hunting. The reason is simple. Most of us learn the nuts and bolts of looking for work by trial and error. That's why I produce this podcast, to help you master the skills you need to find a great job. It's also why I wrote my new book, Land Your Dream Job Anywhere. For 15 years at Max List, I've helped people in Portland, Oregon find meaningful, well-paying, and rewarding jobs that they love. Now, I put all of my job hunting secrets in one book that can help you no matter where you live. You'll learn how to get clear about your career goals, find hidden jobs that never get posted, and ace your next job interview. For more information and to download the first chapter for free, visit maxlist.org/anywhere. Now let's turn to this week's guest expert, Nissar Ahamed. Nissar Ahamed publishes Career Metis, an award-winning online community for job seekers. His site includes a blog, podcast, and other resources that help people get their dream job faster. He joins us today from Toronto in Canada. Nissar, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, Mac, thanks for having me on the show. It's a pleasure.
Well, it's an honor to have you as a guest. Now, our topic this week, as you know, is unconventional job search hacks. And you are a big fan, Nissar, of encouraging job seekers to do things differently during a search. Let's start with a conventional search. What does a conventional job search look like, Nissar?
The reason I'm a big fan of the unconventional job search, Mac, is because the conventional job search, as it denotes, it is what everybody else is doing, and it is you. If you're applying it to traditional routes or the conventional routes, you're actually decreasing your chances of being found. The competition is intense. And to answer your question, a conventional or traditional process would be what everybody else does nowadays, like going to a site such as Indeed, Monster, Career Builder, LinkedIn, and submitting your resume online, just like hundreds of other candidates who are looking for the same job.
And what's the problem with that? Why might that be an effective strategy?
First of all, I would say the number one thing is competition. You are competing with essentially all people with similar skill sets. So it becomes very difficult to cut through the noise. And especially if you're a new grad just starting out and let's say you have a mass marketing degree in your city and there are 5 to 6 different colleges and universities, each having 100 graduate seats. So you're competing with 200 to 500 different candidates for the same job. And it's very difficult to differentiate yourself if you're just sending the application. So that's number one. The second reason is I'm sure everyone has heard about or even experienced something called an application tracking system. These are robots or softwares that companies use to screen a lot of candidates. And these ATSs are very unforgiving. If your application does not match some of the ideal requirements it has, you're automatically disqualifying yourself. So even though you might be the best candidate, you might be better than everyone else applying, there's a good chance that the hiring manager has never even seen your resume. So those are the couple of reasons it's much more difficult to cut through the noise through the traditional routes.
Okay, so the odds are tough because you might be competing with hundreds of people, and then automation might be a factor here. Your resume or your application materials might not actually be seen by a person. They're being scanned by a machine.
Exactly. And one more thing I would say, there is a bias. Like, for example, when you're applying, let's say a hiring manager is looking at 100 different resumes or 200 different resumes. There's a bias that you're automatically put into that bucket. You're one among many. And that's never a good position to be, right? Let's say you're going out, put yourself in the shoe of someone on a Friday night, you want to go out to a good restaurant. And what would you rather choose? The one that comes top on mind or one of many? Because I don't think anybody gets excited to go to a restaurant that is, or anything that is one of many. And anything with life. So when you are applying, going back to the job search question, when you're applying through a system such as Monster or Indeed, that there is always this bias that as far as the hiring manager or the recruiter is concerned, you're one of the many people applying for that job. So it's hard to differentiate.
Now, one of the hacks that you recommend is to start by understanding the market that you want to work in. Tell us more about that, Nissar.
Yes, and I think this is key for two types of people: new grads, just graduating recently, and also someone who's looking to transition from whatever career they're doing. So let's say if someone has been working in a particular career for many years, they find that their heart is not into that. They want to pivot to something else. One of the first things I recommend is study the market. And when I say study, I'm not asking just watch a couple of videos and just see what else is out there, but I mean really, really study. For example, after you might find that you are interested in working in software. And for me, many years ago, I was working in sales, not software sales. I wanted to get into software. So I started researching, and I started studying the different types of software companies. And I remember at that time, what I was really interested in is business to business enterprise software, such as CRM. So I spent weekends studying the entire market, what the competition is, what the strength is. So when I went to these interviews, I was well prepared. In fact, my knowledge level was almost equal to someone working there for 6 to 12 months. So once I got my foot in the door, the hiring managers were really impressed with the knowledge level. That itself is another factor that really helped me stand out. So researching, studying really helps you get a thorough understanding. And think about it this way. If someone wants to work in a company or a career, and they probably are going to be spending 2 to 5 to 10 years in that industry, wouldn't that person want to spend maybe a few hours researching and learning about that industry?
Yeah, I see your point, and I think there's the advantage that you have as a candidate when you do that kind of research. But again, you're making a choice where you're likely to be in a position for several years, and if you're choosing to a sector or a field for the first time, you're going to be in that field for maybe 3, 5, 10 years. And why wouldn't you, as you say, Nissar, invest that time to make sure you're making the right choice?
Yes, and Mac, just one more point to that is, let's say you do this research and you're quickly able to find out. Sometimes you get really excited about the industry you want to get in. Sometimes you find out that's not the industry you want to get in. Classic example is, let's say someone doing a research. For some reason, they have an inclination towards retail, but then they do all the research and study and find out that industry is in a downward trend. Everything is shifting online. I shouldn't say everything. I would say the model is reliant heavily on online. So someone getting into that field is going in an industry which is in a downward trend. So after doing all the research, you could probably save yourself a lot of heartache and frustration down the line. There could be two things. Either you're really excited about the industry you want to get in, or sometimes you're so glad that you did the research that you're not getting into the wrong industry.
Right. And sometimes people use the job search. They take a position and they use it to discover whether or not they want to work in that industry. And after 6 or 12 months, they discover it's not a good fit and they've got to start a search over. And that's a lot of lost time. So your point is well taken. Now, another hack that you recommend, Nissar, is tapping into your passion when you're doing a search. Tell us about that.
So this is an exciting topic for me. For example, when I say tapping into your passion, and I know the word passion is used by everyone nowadays, any career blog, any website, any business site talks about passion. And it gets a little diluted. But my understanding, if I can simplify what passion means, is something that you really enjoy doing. So for me, when I started out of school, I came out with an engineering degree. I was studying in engineering, but I picked up a couple of books on business as I was nearing the end of my graduation. And I found that I was more excited about working in sales. I know rarely you will find an engineer wanting to get into sales.
That is a rare combination. Kudos to you.
That's like a total tangent. But I found that even when I was going through my 4 years of schooling, I was a people person. I like to solve problems. And some reason that excited me. So when I entered the workforce, my situation was a little bit different because I graduated in India. When I came to Toronto, Canada, they did not immediately recognize my degree. So I had the option. They gave me two options: go back to school, get a master's, or go do something else. So for me, it was convenient, and I decided, okay, I've already decided that I wanted to get into sales. So I got into sales. So because I wanted to get into sales, I started studying and reading. At that time, the internet did not have as many resources as we have today. So I took as many books as I can from the library, started studying the subject as if I've been there in the industry for 5-6 years. And then when I used to go to these interviews, the questions they always used to ask me is, you're an engineer, why do you want to be in sales? And for me, I think that was the easiest question to answer because I could not answer anything regarding experience. And I can tell you, I was able to get a start because I was excited and passionate. And that's just my personal story that happened when I got into the workforce. I can share, like even the people that I've worked with who really enjoy what they do today, same thing happened. They didn't just take the first job that came in. They somehow found something that they really enjoyed and found a career or a job that allowed them to do that.
And so tell us a little more about that. How did they find, because everybody wants to do something that they're passionate about and find work that they can enjoy. Was there something they did that was unconventional, outside the norm, that allowed them to do that, Nissar?
Yeah, absolutely. This reminds me of a friend of mine. So he graduated with a psychology degree. And even as he was studying in his university, he found himself very interested in e-commerce, digital marketing, web technologies. He started just playing around, creating his own blog. Then he found that's exactly where he wanted to be. He wanted to work in marketing, specifically digital marketing. And this is the challenge he had. He graduated and he found out that he's not only competing with everyone else, but he's actually competing with students or new graduates who have marketing degrees. So he had a disadvantage, someone with a psychology. So what he did was something different. So one of the things he did is, as he was working on some part-time jobs, he started creating a website. He started really understanding so he can articulate what he was really passionate about. And what really excites up, he did something totally different. So instead of applying for jobs like everyone else, he went on LinkedIn, found a list of startups in Toronto, which specialized in digital marketing, digital software, technology. He sent them all an invitation for coffee. He specifically reached out to CMOs, CEOs, and he sent them an invitation for coffee, asking them to meet them. But he'd never mentioned in his initial email that he's looking for a job. He just wanted, he replied, he told them the truth. He said, I'm a psychology graduate. I find myself really interested in web technologies. I'd love to explore. I'd like to pick your brains. Could you meet me for coffee? Naturally, like anything else, most people did not respond. That's a common thing. Whenever you reach out, you will not always get a positive response. Many people will reject you. But he ended up one CMO of a startup decided to meet him. So she invited him for coffee. They met. He talked about his experience, some of the things that he has been doing. And she was impressed with his passion, with his excitement. And she invited him for an actual interview at the company. So he went, I think a few days later or a week later, presented to the entire company, and they hired him. And when he told me the story, I was excited. I was thinking, oh, this is actually, not many people will do that. You overcame the odds. You not only competed with other individuals with a marketing degree, but you've competed with everyone else who's applying for a job using an online portal. And if you think about it, the time he invested was much, much minimal than sitting in front of a computer and applying for tons of jobs and not knowing whether they have looked at your resume or not. So that really worked. And that is something I would recommend anyone, even now, even myself, if I'm in a position where I have to look for a position, I would do the same thing. let me take back the last sentence. I actually did that myself recently. One thing you did mention at the beginning is careermetis.com is a publishing site where I focus a lot of my energies in the evenings and weekends. But I do have a full-time job. I work in software sales. So the recent company I work for, even though I met the CEO of the company many months ago, recently I sent him an invitation to meet for coffee. We met for coffee. And my blog and my site really put me in a favorable position, and I was offered the position right away. I didn't have to apply for the job again. So my friend's story inspired me. It gave me proof that it is possible. And I think I've shared 2 stories using the same unconventional methods of finding a job.
Okay. So research your market, tap into your passion, and look for ways to get in front of decision makers in your field, in addition to the normal job hunting process. Those are all great strategies, Nissar. Now, tell us what's next for you.
So in terms of what's next for me, one of the things that really keeps me excited and busy is the publishing platform, the site careermetis.com. And what I have been fortunate over the last few months, initially I started out myself writing content. Then I had individuals reach out to me and they wanted to contribute. So I've shifted gears, and right now all I'm doing is managing content. And I've been fortunate enough to have authors and contributors from around the world. And recently we hit a major milestone. We passed 500 contributors to the site who have submitted unique content. So I'm at a stage where I am always looking to expand and get new content. And the reason I want to get new content is to add different perspective. So I'm always looking to collaborate and partner with others. And I learn that from them. I learn myself, and I can share that to my readers. So that's where my focus is nowadays.
Okay. Well, I visited your site a number of times, and it has a lot of valuable content for job seekers and people interested in improving their careers. So we'll definitely include links in the show notes, both to your site, which is careermetis.com. And I know people can also reach you via email, and your email address is Nissar, that's Nissar, at careermetis.com. And again, we'll include both your email address and the website in our show notes. Nissar, thanks so much for joining us today. It's been a great conversation.
Once again, thanks for having me. And I love talking about these ideas. And if after listening to this, someone else gets inspired to try an unconventional method for job search, I would be really happy to know that. So thank you for having me as a guest.
It's been a pleasure. Take care.
Take care.
All right, we're back in the MaxList studio with my colleagues, Jessica, Becky, and Ben. So what were some important points you heard Nissar make in my conversation with him? Becky?
I thought he was really energetic and awesome to listen to.
Yeah, he had great content.
Yeah. I think that he had a lot of great points, like just really cutting through the noise and the fact that most people are sort of like just doing the basics. Well, I guess, a lot of people are. But that extra bit of tenacity, putting yourself out there, using a little more strategy to reach out to the right people will get you far. And I feel like the example that he just gave at the end of the interview about his friend who reached out to all the CEOs and CMOs and was just really authentic, and most people didn't respond, but the one person who did made all the difference, know. And I think that is a good lesson for job seekers, that you can't get bogged down by the fear of, well, maybe no one will respond, because you really just have to do your best and think of creative ways to really cut through that noise.
Yeah, I like what you said about being authentic, and if it's really genuine and you're putting your true authentic self out there,
you have a better chance of connecting with the right company.
Absolutely,
too.
You're going to attract the right people, and you only need to attract one right person. And not a bunch of wrong people.
Yeah, totally.
I loved his point about the value of research. It not only helps you prepare for interviews and get clear about the companies you want to work for, but it also helps you figure out what you don't want to do. And when you combine research with passion, and I think A lot of people want to say yes to everything, and doing what he suggested is unconventional, but it pays dividends because it helps you figure out what to say no to, as well as what you're going to get excited about saying yes to.
That's important.
Yeah.
I want to go back to that point about research, especially if you're looking to change careers, because I think a lot of people think, well, I'll get on-the-job training. I'll figure out how to do the job once I get the job. And I think that happens a lot of the time, but you can't get like on-the-job passion or on-the-job interest, right? And you've got to like do your homework ahead of time to like show the employer like this is something I'm already interested in and I know what I'm talking about subject matter wise. How I'm going to operationalize this with your company, maybe that's where you kind of learn on the job. But I think showing a real depth of knowledge and passion about a specific topic and talking with people about that is a great way to suss out new opportunities that are there. I mean, I can't tell you how many conversations I've been in where like I've been talking to someone and I've had the thought like, if I had a job, the money to hire this person, this is the person I would need for this job, right? And I work for a small company, so we don't hire that much, but like someone who does hire a lot and has a whole much bigger HR budget, like if you show interest and passion and you're coming up with interesting ideas, those kind of informal conversations you're having over coffee are going to lead to concrete job offers.
Totally.
Great. Well, great conversation. Thank you all, and thank you, Nissar, for joining us this week. And thank you to our listeners for downloading today's episode of Find Your Dream Job. If you like what you hear, please sign up for our free weekly newsletter. In every issue, you get the key points of that week's show. And we also include links to all the resources mentioned, as well as a transcript of the full episode. If you subscribe to the newsletter now, you'll get our new guide, the Top Career Podcasts of 2017. Discover all the podcasts that can help you find a great job and get the career you want. Get your free newsletter and podcast guide today. Go to maxlist.org/topcareerpodcasts2017. And join us next Wednesday when our special guest will be Revi Goldwasser. She'll show us how to prepare for your next job interview. Until next time, thanks for letting us help you find your dream job.